The city slept under a heavy blanket of darkness, its streets quiet except for the distant hum of the occasional taxi or the soft whisper of the wind rustling through the bare branches of the late autumn trees. The moon, pale and ethereal, cast a silver glow across the wet pavements, making them glisten like scattered stars. In a small café tucked away between two narrow streets, Ava sat by the window, cradling a steaming cup of coffee, her fingers tracing the rim absent-mindedly. The world outside seemed distant, almost unreal, as she watched droplets of rain race down the glass, merging and splitting like tiny rivers finding their way to a hidden ocean. She felt an emptiness in her chest, a longing she could not name, as memories of laughter, whispered promises, and stolen kisses danced in her mind. The soft strains of a violin playing from a street musician nearby seeped through the glass, tugging at her heartstrings, resonating with the invisible ache that had taken residence in her soul. Ava's eyes glistened with a quiet hope, and yet a shadow of fear lingered, fear of being hurt, of hoping too much, of opening herself to a love that might slip away like sand through her fingers. Just as she thought she might surrender to the melancholy of the midnight hour, the door chimed softly, announcing a presence that made the entire room seem to shift. Ethan stood there, rain dripping from the shoulders of his coat, his hair slightly tousled, and the faintest smile tugging at his lips. There was something almost magnetic about him in the dim light, a pull that Ava had tried to resist for weeks. He approached slowly, as if afraid the world might crumble if he rushed the moment. And when their eyes met, the air between them seemed to vibrate with unsaid words, memories of old love, and the possibility of something reborn. The violin's melody grew louder, as if it sensed the surge of emotion in the cafe, and Ava realized, with a sudden, breathtaking clarity, that she had been waiting for this, waiting for him to appear, waiting for the midnight to finally confess what the day could not. And so, without a word, he pulled out the chair opposite her, his eyes never leaving hers, and in that simple gesture, the room transformed, the rain outside becoming a symphony, the city turning into a backdrop for a love story that was quietly, irrevocably beginning once more. Their conversation started in whispers, a delicate dance of voices and glances, where every word carried a weight that neither had fully realized until now. Ethan's voice was low, resonant, and filled with an intimacy that made Ava's pulse quicken. It was the voice that had haunted her dreams, the one that had lingered in her memory during lonely nights and sleepless hours. They spoke of trivial things at first, the weather, the music, the mundane happenings of their separate lives, but beneath the surface, every pause, every hesitation, was laden with the history The air between them seemed almost electric, charged with emotions long suppressed and desires long denied. Ava noticed the way Ethan's eyes softened when he laughed, the way his hand reached instinctively to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, and she felt a warmth spreading through her that she hadn't known in months. Time became fluid, minutes stretching into hours as they spoke and laughed and remembered. Stories from their shared past emerged, some funny, some bittersweet, each one a thread weaving them back together, mending the invisible tear that had separated them. Outside, the rain continued to fall, turning the world into a blur of reflections and shadows, yet inside, the cafe felt like a sanctuary, a place where the outside world could wait, where only the two of them existed. When silence finally fell, it was not awkward but profound, filled with anticipation, with the kind of unspoken understanding that only two hearts that have known each other's depths can share. Ethan reached for Ava's hand, and the contact was electric, a shock that traveled from her fingers to her heart, awakening every dormant feeling. He leaned closer, and she could feel the warmth of his breath, the subtle scent of rain on his coat mixing with the faint cologne she remembered from long ago. Words were unnecessary now, the connection spoke for itself, a language older than time, richer than any poetry they could ever read. And when he finally closed the distance between them, their lips met in a kiss that was both familiar and new, a gentle merging of past and present, a silent promise that the midnight had witnessed their hearts finding each other again. The world outside might have been asleep, but inside the cafe, time seemed to slow to a languid rhythm, dictated only by their closeness, their whispers, and the beating of two hearts reuniting. Ethan pulled back just slightly, enough to rest his forehead against Ava's, and she felt her breath hitch, a shiver running down her spine that had nothing to do with the chill outside. They spoke then, in half-sentences and fragmented thoughts, about dreams deferred, regrets embraced, and the strange, wonderful inevitability of finding each other again. Ava's hair, damp from the rain outside, brushed against Ethan's cheek, and the sensation sent shivers of remembered intimacy cascading through her. She noticed the way the light played on his features, the gentle curve of his jaw, the subtle crinkle at the corners of his eyes, the faint stubble that made him look rugged yet tender all at once. They laughed quietly at memories of awkward moments, silly arguments, and the small, tender gestures that had defined their early days together, realizing that love was never about perfection but about presence, patience, and the courage to return even when the past was scarred. Outside, the city lights reflected in the puddles on the street, shimmering like a mirror to the feelings they now shared. Time, in that space, had no dominion. Minutes flowed like rivers, seamless and eternal. Ethan brushed his hand along the small of Ava's back, drawing her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder, letting the safety and warmth of his presence flood her being. Every heartbeat, every gentle touch, was a confirmation that love, when true, does not vanish, it waits in silence, ready to bloom when the moment is right. And in the glow of the midnight, surrounded by the quiet hum of a world that had moved on, Ava and Ethan discovered that some connections are eternal, stitched into the fabric of the universe itself, waiting for the precise moment when hearts aligned to allow their story to continue. The rain outside gradually softened into a mist, and the world began to hint at the approaching dawn, pale streaks of light threading through the clouds. Ethan and Ava finally stepped out onto the glistening streets, hand in hand, their steps slow, savoring the fragile magic of the night. The cool air kissed their cheeks, and every sound, the distant drip of water from the rooftops, the soft hum of an early taxi, the rustle of leaves, felt amplified, part of a symphony composed just for them. They walked in silence at first, not out of awkwardness but out of reverence for the fragile perfection of the moment. Every glance, every brush of fingers, spoke volumes, words unnecessary when hearts understood one another so completely. Ethan paused near a street lamp, its warm glow casting a golden halo around them, and drew Ava close, resting his forehead against hers once again. "I never stopped thinking about you," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Ava smiled softly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, and she replied, "And I never stopped waiting for this, to feel this again, with you." The intimacy of the midnight hour enveloped them, wrapping around their souls, sealing away the worries and fears of the past. Every shadow, every reflection in the puddles, seemed to echo their connection, as if the world itself acknowledged their reunion. They spoke of futures yet to be written, of shared dreams and silent promises, of the tender certainty that love, once true, could weather any storm. In the hush of the early morning, with the last traces of rain shimmering on the streets, Ava and Ethan's hearts beat in synchrony, a rhythm older than memory, a cadence that had waited patiently for this night, this moment, this rediscovery of one another. As the first golden rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, bathing the city in a gentle glow, Ava and Ethan found themselves seated on the edge of a quiet fountain, their legs brushing, fingers entwined, and hearts aligned. The night had given them a gift, a chance to remember, to forgive, and to embrace the enduring power of love. They watched the water dance in the morning light, reflecting the myriad colors of dawn, and in that reflection, they saw not just themselves but the journey that had led them here, the trials, the heartbreak, the longing, and the eventual, inevitable reunion. Ethan tucked a loose strand of hair behind Ava's ear and traced the line of her jaw with a featherlight touch, his eyes searching hers for the silent assurances they both needed. "Maybe we were meant to find our way back," Ava whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft gurgle of the fountain. Ethan smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple, and replied, "Or maybe we were always here, waiting for the midnight to show us the way." They lingered there, savoring the warmth of the sun on their faces, the scent of wet earth mingling with the promise of a new day, and the unspoken understanding that some loves are timeless, impervious to distance and doubt. The night, with all its mystery, longing, and enchantment, had borne witness to their hearts' reunion, and as the city awoke around them, Ava and Ethan knew that their love had been reborn, not as a fleeting spark, but as an enduring flame that would illuminate every midnight, every dawn, every quiet moment they were privileged to share.